Well, howdy everyone. Hope y'all are staying warm. It's a mite bit chilly down here in Texas. We're all getting bundled up and preparing for those sub 75 degree days. Brr. Anyway, today I'm going to talk about everyone's favorite subject, music theory. Okay. So the way I see music is that it fundamentally is broken down into three parts. You have rhythm, harmony, and melody. Now for me, these three parts can be expressed as your bedrock, your glue, and your flash. And of course, thinking of it in these terms has worked out well for me. I've been using this kind of system for at least about 10 minutes before I wrote this script. Alright, so since I consider rhythm to be kind of the bedrock of a song, it's probably a pretty good place to start. So what you're going to see when you see a rhythm written out is you're going to see two numbers. This is going to be the length of the note. So a 4 is going to denote that it's a quarter note, an 8 is going to denote that it's an eighth note. A quarter note is longer than an eighth note, a 16th note is shorter than an eighth note, 32nd note's even shorter. A half note is going to be longer than a quarter note, but generally it's going to either be written out in a 4 or an 8. Sometimes you'll see it as 2. Now this top note is going to be how many of those notes each measure is going to get. So a 2/4 means that in one measure you're going to have two quarter notes. So it really kind of gets broken down into two lanes. You've got the 3s and the 2s. Now the 2s are pretty simple. You're generally either going to see a 2/4 or a 4/4. And that's going to be about 80% of the music that's out there. Now, with the 3s, a 3/4 is going to be your general waltz. It's going to be 1 2 3 1 2 3. Now that can lead into a 6/8, and a 6/8 is going to be again 6 eighth notes in one measure as opposed to 3 quarter notes. Now in reality, 6/8 is 3/4. It's not any different, but the feel is slightly different because you count all the way up to 6 and then start over. So if you think of a song like The House of the Rising Sun, you go 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6. So what you're really getting out of that is the start of the next measure is where the pulse of the song comes from. And then on a similar vein, you can come into 12/8. Now 12/8 is going to be your general blues. A lot of times it feels like a 4/4 but playing triplets, like 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. A lot of times it's slowed down, like 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. It's not significantly different from a 3/4 as far as the numbers go, but the feel of the pulse is going to be significantly different. Then you got some kind of weird ones up here. You got a 7/4, a 5/4. You can really do anything. There's 9/8. 5/4, that's going to be like the Mission Impossible song. It has an extra note than what most people are expecting in each measure, and so it kind of gives a little bit of tension, and it kind of draws you forward into the next measure that you're going into. So that's kind of how rhythm is going to be written out. The other thing to look at is your BPM. You're generally going to be somewhere in the 90s to 120. That's going to be your general kind of pop feel. 120 is almost always going to work. It's going to be good for dance music. It's going to be good for a rock song. A lot of songs are actually going to be more in the 112 to 120 range. And that just means 120 beats per minute or 2 beats per second. It's kind of like if an average person's heart beats 60 seconds in a minute, or 60 times in a minute, you'd be playing 2 beats for every heartbeat. And that's one of the reasons it's so good for dance music, is it's energetic. It gets you going faster than your normal resting heart rate would be. So for rhythm, it's really a combination of the BPM, which is going to tell you how fast the tempo is, and the actual time signature that it's going to be in. So now that we have rhythm done, let's boogie on down to harmony. Alright, now this here is something a lot of people might have already seen. It's going to be called the circle of fifths. And what that means is it going in this direction from this chord to this chord to this chord is all going to be going up a fifth. It's going to be going up what's called a perfect fifth. And that's just that C to G is a fifth. And what you'll see when you spell out a chord is C, if it's your chord that you're starting with, the C is going to be the 1, the E is going to be the third. The third is going to determine whether it's a major or minor chord. So if it was an E flat, it would be a minor, but because it's an E, it's a major chord. And the G is going to be called the fifth. So everything going in this way is going up a fifth, and everything going in this way is actually going up a fourth. And what a fourth is going to be called a subdominant. So when you have a C, your C is going to be called the tonic. It's the root chord, it's the root note of the scale. The fifth chord, it's called a dominant. And what a dominant does is it leads into the root whenever you're trying to resolve something. So a fifth is a dominant, a 4 is going to be a subdominant. Everything going in this direction is going a fourth. So F to B flat is a fourth, B flat to E flat is a fourth, but E flat to B flat is a fifth, B flat to F is a fifth, and it goes like this in a circle. Now what's nice is, on the inside of this circle, you have the relative minors of everything on the outside. So if you're in C major, the relative minor is going to be A. If you're in G major, the relative minor is going to be E. And they also go in the same pattern. So this is going up a fifth, a fifth, a fifth. And this is going up a fourth, a fourth, a fourth. And it goes around in a circle. Now, one of the things you'll notice is something like an F sharp and a G flat. Those are the same notes. It just really depends on the key that you're actually in. But for any sharp and flat note is also a sharp and flat note. So B flat is A sharp. Now coming down into how chords are broken out, if you're in the key of C, your one chord is going to be a major, and a major is always denoted with a capital Roman numeral. And so your 1 chord, your 4 chord, and your 5 chord, your subdominant and dominant, are going to be all majors. Every other chord in any major scale is either going to be a minor or a diminished chord. So your 2 chord, your 3 chord, and your 6 chords are all going to be minors. Your 6th chord is going to be the relative minor. So the 6th from C is going to be an A, and an A is a minor. So anytime you want to play something in C, you can also play an A minor. And that goes for anything on this circle. The major 1 and the relative minor 6 are going to have the exact same chords in them. So now that you have a little bit of an understanding of how the harmony is going to work and how chords might be developed, let's matriculate on down to the melody. Now let's look at melodies, ooh yeah! Alright. So as we talked about with the harmony section, your C major is going to have a relative minor, which is the 6th minor. For C major, it's going to be A minor. Now, I'm going to show you the step process towards building a scale. Let's do it in green. And I'm going to start with C. And the reason people generally do C is because there are no flats or sharps in the C scale or the A minor scale. So, because there's no D flat, you're doing a whole step. A half step would go from C to D flat. A whole step goes from C to D. So another whole step from D would go to E. And then a half step goes to F because there is no F flat. Then a whole step goes to G. A whole step goes to A. A whole step goes to B. And then again, because there is no C flat, you round it off with a C, and that would just be an octave higher than the C you started with. So if you're going to look at the minor scale, you would just start at A and instead of it being the sixth of C, it would be the new 1, and then the B would be the 2. You don't need the C anymore because you have one down here. So A to B to C, B to C is going to be a half step to your third note, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th. So while the major scale goes whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, the minor scale goes whole, half, whole, half, whole, whole. Now there are 3 versions of the minor scale. This is a natural minor. I'm not really going to talk about the melodic or harmonic, but what those do is essentially change the distance between the 5th and the 6th and the 6th and the 7th scales. Everything else is going to stay the same. Now when you're looking at most Western music, most rock music, most pop music, that sort of thing, aside from the major scale, the other major scale that you're going to use is the pentatonic. And it's pentatonic because there's 5 notes in it. Now in the pentatonic major, it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. There is no 4 or 7. The 4 is a subdominant, and the 7 is kind of a weak dominant. The 4 would be the F in C, and the 7 would be the B, which the chord it makes is actually a diminished chord, but a diminished chord because if you look back at the spelling out of the C chord, the G is 5, the G chord is G, B, D, or the B diminished chord is going to be B, D, F. So it has 2 notes that are the same as a G, so it can occasionally work as a dominant, but it's very weak. So the 2 notes that are really taken out of the major pentatonic are fairly weak notes. Similarly, in the minor pentatonic, you're going to have the 1, 3, 4, 5, and 7. No 2 and no 6. The 2 again is at B, and then the 6, which is the F, they're the same notes that are missing. It's going to be the exact same notes in the C major and the A minor pentatonic. But again, you're taking out a subdominant that's kind of weak. So you have more strong notes in the pentatonic scale. All right. So moving on from the 2 scales that you really want to focus on, the major scale / minor, natural minor, and the pentatonic. The next thing you want to look at is modes. A lot of people are going to talk about them. The modes are literally just going to be how the harmony is named. So the major 1 is going to be Ionian, the minor 2 is a Dorian, minor 3 is a Phrygian, major 4 is Lydian, major 5 is Mixolydian, minor 6 is Aeolian, and this lonely guy over here, the Locrian, I guess Locrian, lonely, I don't know. It's going to be the diminished one. It doesn't really have any friends to play with. Now, one of the things that's going to help you in writing a melody is knowing what these sound like. Use them if you want to be happy or joyful. You'll probably use a major. You want to be sad or a little bit powerful, you might use the Aeolian minor. The other 4 modes that are often used, Locrian's not used that often. It's nice to know what they sound like. So the Lydian is going to be almost cartoony, almost soaring up into the air. It's going to be a little bit less forced and structured than the major scale would be. The Mixolydian and the Dorian are both going to have a relatively bluesy feel to them. Mixolydian is going to be kind of a bluesy major, Dorian's a bluesy minor. I like to think of the Mixolydian as a bluegrass scale, anything that's kind of upbeat but has kind of a bluesy, things like Lynyrd Skynyrd, kind of blues rock, blues country, bluegrass, anything with blue in it is going to pretty much rely on the Mixolydian. While the Dorian, I kind of think of it as more of a cool blues. Some of the harder edge blues songs, some of the old rock that is blues based is going to be Dorian, as well as to me, I kind of think of as a guy walking down the street and you hear this like really intense bluesy feel sound in the background as he's trying to show in like a movie or something that he's like the guy in charge. That's what I would that's what I would picture as a Dorian sound. The Phrygian sound is going to be a little bit more out there. It's minor, but it has a feel that's almost kind of exotic. It doesn't necessarily feel natural to a Western ear, but it does fit. A lot of heavy metal uses it. A lot of punk might use it, especially when it's more of the harder edge punk. It just kind of depends on what they want to do with it. And then of course, anytime you want to make a gypsy sound, or maybe have like a MIDI sound, anything like that, you might look at using the Phrygian. So it's nice to know kind of what each of the modes sounds like, as well as the two big scales that you're going to use. That's really how you're going to put your melody together. And so you kind of see how you have the rhythm, and that's your bedrock. That shows you what the basic of the song is. The melody is the flash. It's what you hear. It's what brings you in. And then the harmony just kind of glues the two together. And that's really the three basic building blocks of a song. So thank you for watching this episode on basic music theory for songwriters. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I had a lot of fun. And until next time, always remember, follow the music, own the show. B-Row out.